Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Humane Language, a podcast which features conversations about language, communication, and humane connection. Today I'm speaking to Faye Treffry, Brand and Communications Manager at Cornwall Wildlife Trust in the UK. Faye is an accomplished marketing, brand, and communications expert, as well as a passionate environmentalist. Her happy place is working for purpose-led businesses and organizations where she can combine her communication and storytelling skills with her love for nature. I'm so excited to talk to Faye about the challenges of communication in a non-profit environment, how to avoid communication fatigue, and the importance of storytelling to engage the general public in a good cause like nature conservation. So hello and welcome, Faye.
Good morning, Anya. Thank you very much for inviting me along to chat to you today.
Absolute pleasure. I'm so honored. Now, Faye, just to help us set the scene, could you share a few words about your own journey into marketing, branding, and comms for a non-profit organization?
Yeah, of course. I've been working in this space, I suppose you'd say, in terms of marketing and comms for close to 20 years now, which you suddenly
Wow.
realise, oh my God, where did the years go? And I've always worked in sort of small businesses and quite purpose-driven organisations. But I
Mm,
think as I've sort of got older, I think there's quite a natural inclination to get more purpose-driven, more passionate about trying to make the world a bit better. And so
yeah.
sort of working for a charity now where it's purely about purpose is definitely a very happy place for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I know, so you went from working for a for-profit company and then you in your last company you actually took the company through the B Corp certification. So you
Yeah,
kind of really drove that, and now you're fully in a non-profit organization. So it feels like a beautiful journey that you've been on.
yeah, I think that's right. It really is sort of, I get going through that B Corp certification and opening your eyes more and more to kind of all the good that can be done in a for-profit, but
Mm,
then actually taking all those learnings into a sector where you're purely about doing good has been,
yeah,
yeah, a really interesting journey and really motivating.
amazing. It's much easier to get up in the morning if you know that what you're doing at work is going to have a positive impact on the world, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like a very lucky person, those cliches about sort of if you love what you do, you'll never do a day's work in your life, something like that, isn't it? But it's true because I really do enjoy sort of what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, just for those listeners who don't know the Cornwall Wildlife Trust, what do you do as a charity, and what is your role specifically in the brand and communications manager role? What does the work involve for you?
Yeah, so as a charity, as the name might suggest, we're based in Cornwall, which is a beautiful part in the southwest of the UK. And our vision is about a Cornwall where nature thrives. So we work across land and sea on huge sort of broad scope of projects looking to improve wildlife in Cornwall, improve our natural
Mm,
environment. And more specifically, in my role within the brand and comms team, we're kind of the mouthpiece of the organisation. So we're about sort of putting our messages out there, connecting more people to our cause, shining a light on all the amazing work that happens across our team,
mm.
and just that encouragement and engagement journey of more people connecting and caring about nature and about wildlife.
Wow. So you kind of have I guess, raising the awareness of what you do, but also essentially growing the membership and driving donations as well. Does that all fall within your responsibility?
It falls within our wider team.
Mm,
We're part of the fundraising and communications team. So within that,
okay.
there's the different functions in terms of
Mm,
membership and donations and everything. Our team is kind of supporting all of those different elements,
yeah.
but also kind of looking at that journey, that one to many voice. How do we speak to this wide audience, and
Yeah.
then we start to sort of take them on the journey with us.
Wow. Amazing. I'm sure even though it's you're probably skipping to work in the morning, I'm sure it's still a very hard and demanding job to get that done because it's not always easy. And I think that's what we wanted to talk to about today in terms of the communication side in a non-profit setting, because there's lots of things to think about. You're competing a lot for attention, with other charities as well as the rest of someone's life, as they go through their day to day. So I wanted to ask you really, what are some of the major challenges in communication in a non-profit organization like Cornwall Wildlife Trust compared to, say, a commercial company?
Yeah, I mean, I think for full transparency, I've been in post for 3 weeks, I think now. So I am really new to role. So still sort of working on understanding both the challenges and the opportunities that there are
Yeah,
with working in a non-profit. And that's really, really interesting. I think it is really interesting. I think for every challenge there's also, it's outweighed by opportunities.
mm,
That's been a really exciting learning. The fact that when you work in a commercial company, there's always a little bit of a trade-off, because ultimately you do have a product or something that you're looking
yeah,
to market or sell. And
yeah,
actually, as a non-profit, you remove some of that degree that can sometimes make the conversation more transactional. People want to hear from you and they want to give you time and space, because there's a degree of sort of assumed respect that comes from you being a charity. And that for
yeah,
me is really exciting as an opportunity. If you're talking to the media, if you're looking to build partnerships with people, there's
mm,
um, a great freedom and power.
yeah,
Um, I guess in terms of the challenges for Cornwall Wildlife Trust, probably one of our biggest challenges is we do so many great things across, as I said, land and sea. We have farm advisors going out to talk to farmers about how to work their land more sustainably.
mm,
We have projects to recover seagrass in the sea. We have species spotting. We have volunteers. We have landscape recovery. There's so much.
yeah,
How do you unify that under a single message that helps people understand what we do, that gives people somewhere to connect to? You don't ask people to choose whether they like land, whether they like sea. How do they understand all of what we do and the
yeah.
connection?
Yeah, absolutely. I was reading a little bit on your website how, you have your nature reserves that you're looking after, and you creating areas and habitats for wildlife and species, which is amazing. But you're then also talking about creating these corridors, so these nature reserves don't just exist in isolation, but to create ways to weave things together and give almost is it corridors that you call them,
Yeah,
where you
yeah,
species can kind of get from one to the other and create this much larger network. And I mean, there's a challenge. It's almost science communication, isn't it? Because you're trying to
yeah,
talk about something that's actually really complex, to then channel that into one simple message that people will remember you for and love you for, and hopefully give some
yeah.
of their money to. It's I think it's a real challenge.
And that, as you say, that sort of that complexity of, we've got a team of absolute sports experts who could kind of give you the Latin name for every
Mm,
species, who could go into hours of detail about a nature corridor, about what would be best planted there, about what species would use that.
yeah,
But how do you then translate that to make a snappy Instagram post that's going to make people care, that's not going to
yeah,
alienate people who don't know the Latin names, who don't know as much? So but you also want to speak to our audience who do know the Latin names. So you're ever kind of juggling which platform has which message for
yeah,
the right person. Yeah, it
yeah,
is.
absolutely.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah. And I was, since you mentioned sort of the transactional nature of for profit, it tends to be, I know we talk about branding and, having customers for a really long time and keeping them engaged, but typically, like you say, there is a transactional aspect to a commercial company. So you get people geared up for something, and in the end they buy something, they give you money, and they get something in exchange. Whereas in, particularly with nature conservation, it's the long game, isn't it? Like, you plant a tree and that person might not even see that tree in its full glory. It might be the next generation. Or I
Yeah,
guess there's lots of examples where nature is fast and slow, but sometimes when you look at these bigger projects, they take 5-10 years to come to fruition,
at the
and
very least.
to
Yeah,
sell people that promise that we're making the world a better place slowly, one tree or one nature conservation at a time. It must be a tricky one to keep people engaged in that.
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally as human beings, we are quite selfish, aren't we? So you're sort of, yeah, you try and find those me moments in it, what will it give
Yeah.
you? And like, as you say, it's not going to give you something tomorrow because it is the long game. So how are you inspiring people to care, which is why you need those entry level communications
Mm.
at the bottom that start to create that
Yeah.
care. Because if you jump straight in with this is a bombus homelina insect that you will not, you're not going to connect in the same way, are you, as like this
Yeah.
is a cute yellow bee. I'm not saying we go quite to that level, but you know what I
No.
mean.
Yeah, you have to make it accessible enough for people to be able to remember it and then share it with other people as well, right?
Yeah, exactly that. I did make up that Latin name just to be.
Excellent. But on the spot, that was very good. Amazing. So, talking about having to hold people's attention for, I guess, not just a one-off donation, but really getting them interested in the charity, the long-term work, and keeping them engaged over a long period of time, we have this thing called communication fatigue. So, I was wondering if you could maybe share for our listeners what is communication fatigue and how can we avoid it in communications?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody listening will kind of recognize that feeling of from the moment we wake up, we are being communicated to, whether that
Mm.
be our radio reaching for the phone in the morning, you walk out the door and there's advertisement hoardings, you go into a shop and there's absolute communication fatigue because every brand's fighting for your attention.
Yeah,
You scroll through Instagram and you might see 4 updates from friends, but the majority of what you're seeing is brands and companies, and it's exhausting and it's a lot. And within that, you're probably also seeing, depending on your bubble, you're
yeah,
probably also seeing a lot of messaging telling you that the planet's in trouble, that the climate's in trouble, and that can be a lot. So it's a
yeah,
really interesting challenge. How do you show up in a way that isn't adding to people's fear, that isn't kind of fighting too much for space, that's somewhere nice to land and to see,
yeah,
and striking that balance between, yes, there's some real challenges. We are in biodiversity, ecological
yeah,
climate crisis, but if we just believe that and that there's no hope, we give up. So how do you
yeah,
give people the bits that they can do to feel like they can make a difference?
yeah. It's a tough ask, isn't it? Especially, I feel within nature conservation, we're trying to get people to connect with nature, and in a weird way, initially how we connect with them might be on social media, and so it's kind of it feels almost oxymoronic, but it's yeah,
Yeah,
you kind of need to reach people through the channels and the machines that they use every day, which is predominantly phones and laptops, but then you also need to bring it back to your original message. And yeah, and also I guess you're fighting against lots of our other charities who also having
yeah.
fighting for amazing causes, and it's tricky. My personal question would be, do you find it easier being in a charity that's kind of fighting for a local cause? Does that make it slightly easier in terms
That
of
is,
communicating?
yeah, as you were sort of talking then, that's exactly what I was sort of thinking. I think the fact that we are very much about Cornwall is our
Mm,
strength and our kind of power. We're not kind of fighting for messaging space on a
yeah,
global or national scale. We are very clear that Cornwall is where we kind of focus our work. So that does give us a real strength. And I think also, as you said, that sort of that trying to get people outside, and we're doing it via digital means. It's something that we battle quite often with in our team. You sort of
yeah,
feel like it's this dark art of how do we get people to look at TikTok more? No, just go outside, because ultimately that's what we want them to do. But I think
yeah,
we're trying more and more to to really connect the online to the offline. So how do we
Mm.
actually create like moments and connections in real life? So for this year, we've launched an engagement campaign called My Wild Cornwall, and it's all
Mm.
about summarising your connection to nature in Cornwall in just 3 words. And within that, we've kind of really purposefully mapped in activations where we're going to go out onto the street and talk to people on the street, kind of meet people where they are and come off these devices and
Yeah.
actually connect with people in real life. And I think we're really excited about doing that and about taking that sort of into the real world.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's also a different touch point. I mean, lots of people probably have these ideas of a charity, a person with a clipboard standing outside a, shopping center or something, trying to pounce on you as you're trying to just get a
Yeah.
quick sandwich in your lunch
Run.
hour. But I think you can have such a positive experience if you're not really if you're not asking people for money in that moment, but it's just truly about connecting with each other and with nature in that moment, in out of home campaigns. I think that can be really powerful, and it can build trust as well. If the first touch point someone has with you isn't about you, trying to get
Give
their
us
money, but
something.
yeah, I think that there's something to be said. So I think that's beautiful. Beautiful way of doing it.
Watch this
Um,
space. Hopefully it'll we haven't done one yet, but the planning is very much about
mm,
how do we not make it look like a
yeah,
charity stand with a clipboard,
yeah,
what can we have as sort of beautiful aesthetical things that draw people in and that don't
yeah,
people leave feeling like they've had a positive connection that's made them think about nature, not
yeah.
that they've had to run away to the other side of the street because someone's going to try and get them to sign up to something.
Yeah, well, if I know anything about you, Faye, then I know with your creative approach to everything in life, I think you will come up with something really beautiful for that campaign. I have
Yeah,
no
too
doubt.
kind, Anya.
So another thing I wanted to ask you about was about storytelling in this nonprofit environment. How do you use storytelling to engage the general public in the I'm going to try and get this right now, in the conversation about nature conservation? It's very hard.
Skills. It's a good job we're filming in the morning and not when you've had a glass of wine.
Absolutely.
um, yeah, I mean, we're all human beings and we all recognise the power of stories. And
Mm,
I think anybody in the sort of comms and marketing space more and more is sort of, yeah, reflects on the importance of storytelling. And when I talked earlier about our kind of challenges and opportunities, the fact that we do so much across so many different projects, across so many
mm,
different spaces, we've got such a rich vein of stories to kind of draw on. And that's that real entry point. There's a story for everybody. If you're interested in the sea, if you're interested in the moors, if you're interested in a cliff walk, if you're interested in a made up Latin species that I won't do again. We've got stories that can connect everybody and can draw them in.
yeah,
Again, it's just finding that unifying message within each story, and that's something that we're sort of doing a lot of work on within the charity to kind of make sure that there's a unified point behind every story that we tell.
yeah, yeah. I was watching the video you released about releasing wild beavers back in Cornwall, and I thought that was such a lovely example of storytelling because I'll share the link to the video in the show
Brilliant.
notes, but it was just so beautifully. It's just 1.5 minutes, right? The video, but it
Yeah.
kind of has voiceovers for the beavers, and there's a whole family, and then I just thought it was a really lovely way of engaging the public, but also sharing why beavers are so important to our nature in a very fun and cute way, I guess, as well.
It ties into that communication fatigue, doesn't it? I think we've probably
Mm,
all seen brilliant videos of beavers and intelligent voiceovers kind of
mm,
going into that detail of why they're such important ecosystem engineers, all the amazing things that they do.
yeah,
But we have all seen that message. So how do you, so we launched our wild beaver appeal earlier this year, and that's
Mm.
about us sort of releasing beavers under license into the wild in Cornwall.
Yeah.
We wanted it to stand out and actually connect people in a different way and not just be a message that they'd heard before in the same way. And so,
Mm.
yeah, I think that video is a great example of doing
Yeah.
exactly that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to use storytelling in your marketing. Um, Fabulous. Another question I have had for you is that obviously you do have quite a large number of stakeholders, I guess, that you need to communicate with, and even within your membership base. I was wondering whether you kind of use any kind of segmentation for, how you communicate your message, maybe which stories you choose, or if you focus on one thing more with one type of donor than another, for example. Um, do you use segmentation at all, or is it for your membership? Is it all the same communication?
No, there's all sorts of sort of segmentation and frameworks going on behind the
Mm,
scenes. It's also somewhere where we have got more work to do, and we're looking at sort of more work to do. Like I said, that sort of that rich vein of stories and so many to share,
yeah.
but the same story isn't going to land with everybody. The My Wild Cornwall campaign that we launched might not be of interest to somebody who's been a member for 30 years and goes
Mm,
out and does sort of species surveys and could tell you the
yeah.
Latin name of everything that they see on Bodmin Moor.
Mm, mm,
Um, so yeah, we're certainly on a sort of body of work to make sure that those right messages are really landing with the right audience. And then also that sort of cross-platform, so making sure that the piece of content that we produce here is working as hard as it can across all of
mm,
our different platforms. Yeah, we have, as I say, I'm 3 weeks into the role,
yeah.
and the list of priorities is like this.
Yes, I can imagine. Actually, that brings me just back to the beavers, just for 1 second. I think the last time we
Always.
spoke, which I think is such an interesting way thinking about how do you do marketing and comms in a charity setting. You were saying that you were just about to have a kind of a beaver walk, bringing in influencers from around Cornwall, I assume, to kind of show them the good work you're doing, and then hopefully they will share that message with their followers as well. Just wondered how it went.
It was wonderful.
Good.
I mean, yeah, we had a brilliant bunch of people that came and joined us for an evening, and we spent an hour staring at a lake, secretly thinking, "Please let the beavers come out." And then they did, and it was amazing. They swam right past and swam right past us and right towards us, and everyone got that wow moment of,
Yeah,
"Oh, there's a beaver." And yeah, I think a huge part of our team's role is that creating connections,
mm,
and that feels like a really lovely journey of sort of building some connections with an audience who can really help us to amplify that message and yeah, reach into to more people who don't make the connection that because they surf or they swim or they walk on the cliff they care
yeah.
about nature. I think working with different people to help us amplify that message is really going to support that.
Yeah, I can totally get that. And I do feel there is also a part of Cornwall that's still quite poor. There I know we have lots of people who live right on the periphery. They live in the beautiful seaside towns. They have that connection. But there's also a core of people that are underprivileged, and that there's people in Cornwall, children that haven't even seen the sea yet, even though they live in places, that have access to it, but they might not have transport. And I think if you can make the connection with those people as well to get them out into nature and share some of the wonders of nature with them, then you're inspiring the next generation of people to look after their land and the nature around them. So yeah, I guess
Yeah.
you have a lot to do, but it's fantastic work. And I'm sure that with your credentials and your skills and all the experience you've gathered, and as well as your passion for nature and environmentalism, you'll be doing an absolutely fantastic job.
Oh, Anya.
So I wanted to thank you so much for coming to speak with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, Faye. And yeah, have a lovely day ahead. I hope there will be some sunshine for you in Cornwall today.
Fingers crossed. I think the forecast is not looking great. Not looking as good as Portugal, I would imagine.
Well, that's fair enough. Thanks so much, Faye. Take
Lovely to
care.
see you. Thanks, Anya. Bye.
Bye bye.